Welcome back to the deep dive. We have a stack of notes on the table today that is, frankly, a little deceptive.
It really is.
On the surface, it looks like we're about to talk about, ancient history or mythology. But once you actually start reading, you realize it's actually about psychology, ethics, and the very messy business of how humans relate to one another.
It's totally deceptive. It pulls a bait and switch on you. You think you're getting a history lesson, and you end up getting a lesson in emotional intelligence.
Exactly. So let's set the stage. The topic is the mother goddess. Now, I want to pause right there because I know it just popped into everyone's head.
Mhm.
You hear that phrase, and you probably think of a stone statue in a museum or maybe some New Age shop with crystals and incense. You think of a figure that usually people a long time ago, used to worship.
Right. We're conditioned to think of the mother goddess as a noun, a thing, a person, or a deity that sits over there on a pedestal separate from us. It's, a destination you go to for help.
But here's where the source material we're diving into today just flips the table. It proposes a complete reframe.
It really does.
It argues that if you are looking for a figure to worship, you are missing the point entirely. The radical proposition here is that the mother goddess isn't a figure. She is a mode of interaction.
That is the core conflict we are going to explore. This research suggests that we have to stop thinking about finding the goddess and start thinking about enacting a specific type of ethical conduct.
Right.
It's the difference between trying to, possess a spiritual truth and the practical, often difficult reality of stewarding life.
Stewarding life. I love that phrasing. So the mission for this deep dive is to unpack what that actually means. We are going to break down the generative principle, which is the fancy term the text uses.
Yeah.
We're going to explore a concept called coherence, which turns out to be the secret sauce. And we're going to look at the trap, why so many people mess this up through projection and ego.
And we have a litmus test to cover, a specific checklist from the notes that helps you determine if you're actually aligned with this principle or if you're just, on a power trip.
And, spoiler alert, the test is not easy to pass. It definitely made me rethink a few things. But let's start at the beginning. If we aren't talking about a statue, what are we talking about? The source material defines this as the generative principle. Can you unpack that?
So across cultures, whether you're looking at Isis, Demeter, or Pachamama, when you strip away the specific costumes in the mythology, you find this common underlying code.
Okay.
And that code is the generative principle. It's the force that generates life. But the text is very specific. It's not just making things. You can make a factory that churns out widgets, but that's not this. This principle is defined by 3 specific traits.
Okay, lay them on us. What's the first one?
The first trait is life that nourishes rather than dominates.
Nourishes rather than dominates. That sounds simple, but in practice, that's a massive distinction.
It is. Think about how we usually approach production in the modern world, especially in business or even agriculture. We often use domination.
Right.
We force the soil to yield with chemicals. We force a team to hit a deadline with threats. It produces results, sure, but it extracts, it depletes the source.
Right. Domination uses up the battery, nourishment recharges it.
Exactly. Nourishment is soil building. You feed the system so that production is a byproduct of health, not a result of force. The text argues that the mother goddess mode is fundamentally about opting out of domination and opting into nourishment.
Okay, so that's trait 1. What's the second?
Intelligence that organizes through relationship. This means the system works because of how the parts connect and relate to each other, not because a dictator at the top shouted an order.
So it's a network, not a pyramid.
It's a network. Which brings us to the third trait, and I think this is the one that really trips people up.
Yes.
The third trait is care that protects without possession.
Protects without possession. That is such a heavy concept because deeply ingrained in our psychology is this idea that if I protect something, if I take care of it, if I invest in it, it's mine.
Of course.
I protect my house because I own the deed. I protect my car because it's my asset.
It's the ownership that usually triggers the care. But this principle asks for something much harder. It asks, can you care for something fiercely? A child, a partner, a community, a forest, while fully accepting that it does not belong to you.
That shifts the dynamic from owner to steward.
Precisely. It shifts from noun to verb.
Yeah.
The text argues that you don't find the mother goddess. You enact this behavior. You are practicing the art of caring without owning.
So it's not about hiking up a mountain to find a guru who will bless you. It's about the internal posture you hold while you're, doing the laundry or managing a project.
It's entirely internal. And the source breaks down that posture. It says interacting with this principle requires four things: humility rather than entitlement, listening rather than projection, reciprocity rather than extraction, and patience rather than urgency.
That list, humility, listening, reciprocity, patience, is basically the anti-algorithm for modern life.
It is.
Everything in our culture screams entitlement, urgency, and extraction. What can I get and how fast can I get it?
Which is why this is actually a very difficult path. It's countercultural. And the text makes a point here that I think is crucial. It says, quote, "This applies regardless of whether the encounter is understood as symbolic, psychological, spiritual, or relational."
Meaning it doesn't matter what you believe.
It doesn't care about your theology. You can be a devout believer or a staunch atheist. The principle isn't checking your membership card. It's checking your behavior.
Huh.
Are you extracting or are you nourishing? That's the only metric.
That's refreshing, honestly. It democratizes the whole thing. But it leads to a practical question. If belief isn't the mechanism, if I can't just believe my way into this connection, how do I actually do it? The source uses a word that I usually associate with, like lasers or physics. Coherence.
Yes, coherence. This is the technical pivot point of the whole deep dive. The text explicitly says, the mother goddess does not respond to belief alone. She responds to coherence.
So let's unpack coherence. In physics, coherence is when waves align to create a stronger signal, like the difference between a flashlight, which scatters light, and a laser, which is focused.
In this ethical context, coherence means alignment between your values and your actions.
Okay.
It means there is no gap. You cannot say you honor the sacred feminine or the web of life and then go out and treat people transactionally. That is an incoherent signal. The signal is scattered.
The source actually gives a checklist for what coherence looks like in the real world. And the first item on the list is a tough one. It says, care is offered without leverage.
Without leverage, that means no strings attached.
But play devil's advocate here. Isn't almost all human interaction somewhat transactional? I'll help you move if you buy me pizza.
In the casual marketplace of friendship, sure. But we are talking about the generative principle, the source of life. If you offer care, only because you are building leverage, I did this for you, so now you owe me loyalty, or I saved you, so now you have to agree with me, that is not care.
Yeah.
That is a loan. You are banking favors.
And loans create debt, so you're turning the person you're caring for into a debtor.
Exactly. And the moment you create a debtor, you have introduced a power dynamic of domination. You've broken the first rule. Coherence means you offer the care because the care is needed, not because it buys you something.
The list also says coherence means boundaries are respected, and then it drops this hammer. Responsibility increases, it does not decrease.
This is where most people get off the bus.
Right, because usually when people seek out spiritual connection, they want relief, they want to be saved, they want to hand over the burden. Universe, take the wheel.
I'm chosen, so I'm special, so the rules don't apply to me. That's the fantasy. But this source argues the exact opposite. It moves the concept away from magic and firmly into ethical conduct.
Okay.
It says that if you are truly in contact with this principle, you don't get a pass on ethics. You get more work. You become more responsible for your impact on others, not less.
So if you think you're connecting with the divine, but you're becoming flaky, unaccountable, or dismissive of how you hurt people...
If you aren't in coherence, you are in a fantasy, you're engaging in what the text calls the trap.
Let's pivot to that. Because the source material spends a significant amount of time detailing how people mess this up, and apparently the failure rate is high.
It is. The text lists specific failures of interaction. People confuse the mother goddess principle with a savior who fixes their life, or a romanticized, sexualized object, or a personal possession.
Oh, yeah.
Or, and this is the biggest one proof of their own special status.
I have connected with the goddess, therefore I am elite.
Right. And the text explains the mechanism behind this failure. It's called projection.
We hear that word a lot in psychology. How does it apply here?
Well, projection is when you take your own internal needs, your unhealed wounds, your desire for a perfect parent, your need for power, and you project them onto the external world like a movie on a screen. Instead of listening to what life actually is, you overlay your fantasy on top of it. The source puts it brutally. Instead of asking what life requires, the ego asks, what can I take?
We're back to extraction again. What can I take from this experience to make me feel better?
And this leads to a concept the notes call literalization. This is fascinating. The text says mix are relational maps, not biographies.
Relational maps. I like that image.
Think about a hiking map. It shows you the terrain, where the cliffs are, where the water is. It helps you navigate the reality of the mountain.
Right.
But the map is not the mountain.
Right.
And the map is not the person hiking next to you.
So the problem arises when we confuse the symbol with a specific person.
Exactly. Let's say you meet a teacher or a partner who embodies that nurturing, protective energy. The trap is to look at them and say, oh, this person is the goddess.
That sounds like a compliment, though.
It sounds like one, but it's actually an act of violence.
Yeah.
Because if I decide you are the goddess, I am no longer seeing you. I'm seeing my map. I'm stripping away your humanity, your flaws, your bad days, and your autonomy.
You're turning them into a symbol.
I'm turning you into a vending machine for my spiritual needs.
And that creates a hierarchy. If you are the goddess and I am the worshiper, the power dynamic is totally skewed.
And the source gives a very stern warning here. It says, the mother goddess protects autonomy. She did not erase it. And it continues. Any interaction that reduces consent, agency, or dignity is, by definition, not aligned with her.
That is the ultimate litmus test for any group or relationship. I don't care how enlightened the leader claims to be. If the dynamic reduces your ability to say no or reduces your dignity, it is not the generative principle. It's just control wearing a costume.
Precisely. And this links to the other side of the trap, bypassing accountability. The text warns against using spiritual concepts to justify harm.
Oh, yeah, we've all heard this.
You hear this. I had to cross that boundary because our connection is so deep it transcends rules. Or, I was teaching you a harsh lesson for your own good.
The crazy wisdom excuse.
The source shuts that down immediately. He says, care that excuses damage is not care. And the mother goddess does not override ethics. She deepens them.
She deepens them. So true connection is an obligation to higher conduct, not a permission slip for bad behavior.
Correct.
Okay, so we've defined the principle: nourish, organize, protect. We've defined the method: coherence. We've looked at the trap: projection and ego. Now let's get to the practical application. The notes call this the litmus test. The source says if you believe you're interacting with this principle, whether through a person, a meditation, whatever, you need to ask yourself two simple questions. And I want everyone listening to actually ask themselves this. Question 1. Does this interaction make you more humble, more careful, and more accountable? Or does it make you more entitled, more possessive, and more self-important?
It's stark. It's almost binary.
There's no gray area there.
And that's the point. The ego hates this test.
Yeah.
The ego wants to be special. But true contact with the generative principle reduces ego inflation. It acts as an equalizer. It makes you realize you're just one small part of a massive web of life.
So if you walk away from a spiritual experience feeling like you're better than everyone else or that the world owes you something,
You haven't met the goddess.
you've just met a bigger version of your own narcissist.
Exactly. You've hallucinated your own importance.
The text lists the results of getting it right, too. It says healthy interaction results in increased responsibility, greater care for the vulnerable, more respect for limits, and this one stood out to me, less fixation on identity.
That is interesting, isn't it? Less fixation on identity. We live in a world obsessed with identity. Who am I? What is my label? What is my tribe?
And this suggests that if you're doing it right, you stop asking, who am I, and start asking, what?
You start asking, what am I doing? It shifts the focus from the self to the service. Which brings us to the final section of our dive. Stewardship.
Stewardship. Because if the goal isn't to become a magical being, what is the goal?
The goal is to be a caretaker. The source says this contact doesn't usually happen on a mountaintop with lightning crashing. It says she appears in quiet and ordinary moments.
I love the examples the text gives here. It says she appears where nourishment replaces sacrifice, where protection replaces control, where cycles are honored rather than forced, and where life is tended rather than owned.
Tended rather than owned. That is the shift we started with.
Let's talk about that distinction, tending versus owning. It makes me think of a garden.
Right. You can own the deed to the land, but you cannot own the life of a tomato plant. You can't command it to grow. You can't force it. You can only provide the conditions: water, sun, soil, and weight.
Right.
You have to respect the autonomy of the life you're caring for.
But in our world, success is almost always defined by ownership. Owning the company, owning the outcome, controlling the narrative.
But the generative principle, life itself, cannot be owned. The source reminds us that life is a flow that we are temporarily responsible for, whether that's raising a child, leading a team, or just taking care of your own body. You are a steward, not a master.
It reminds me of that line in the text. Most of these moments are not famous. We're conditioned to think that spiritual or ethical greatness needs to be loud. It needs a podcast, frankly.
Yeah, or a best-selling book. But this says it's happening in the quiet moments where gentleness is chosen over power.
That's the hardest choice, often. To choose gentleness when you have the power to dominate.
To choose to nourish when you could extract. That is where the mother goddess actually lives. And not in the statue, but in that specific decision to be gentle when you don't have to be.
It really democratizes the whole concept. You don't need to be a high priestess. You don't need to go on a retreat. You just need to be a decent person who is paying attention to how they impact others.
It connects back to that idea of coherence. If you are a person who cares without domination, if you participate in systems that sustain without extraction, you are the incarnation.
You are the incarnation. That sounds heavy.
But not in an ego way, not, I am the goddess, bow to me.
Right, right. More like I am the hands.
Exactly. I am the mechanism by which care is entering the world right now. The Source puts it beautifully. The mother goddess does not need followers. She needs caretakers.
That's the line that needs to go on the billboard. She does not need followers. She needs caretakers. That completely dismantles the guru complex.
It does. It removes the hierarchy. If you are taking care of life, whether that's a garden, a community, a family, or just your own ethical conduct, you are doing the real work. You don't need to sign up for a belief system. You just need to do the job.
So let's recap the journey we've been on today. We started with the idea that the mother goddess is often misunderstood as a relic or a deity to be worshipped.
Right.
But the source material argues she is actually a mode of interaction, a way of relating to the world.
A verb, not a noun.
We learned that the key to this interaction is coherence, making sure your actions match your values, specifically offering care without leverage, no hidden contracts.
And we look at the traps: projection, literalization, and the ego's desire to be special. We learned that if your spirituality makes you entitled, it's fake.
And finally, we landed on stewardship. The idea that true connection looks like ordinary acts of care, respecting boundaries, and tending to life rather than trying to own it.
It really is a call to maturity. It asks us to grow up, spiritually speaking, to stop looking for a parent figure to save us, and to start acting like responsible adults who care for the world.
It's empowering, but it's also a lot of work. It was almost easier when we could just leave an offering at the statue and walk away.
That's usually how the truth works.
Yeah.
It's rarely a shortcut.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with a thought to carry into your weekend. We've talked a lot about theory, but let's make it practical.
If we accept the premise of the Source, that the mother goddess appears in systems that sustain without extraction, and in moments where gentleness is chosen over power, then she is probably already around you.
That's a cool thought. She's not hiding in a temple somewhere.
So the question is, where might she be waiting for you to notice her in your own daily life right now? Is it in a difficult conversation you've been avoiding, where you need to listen instead of project? Is it in a moment of patience you can offer your child when you're exhausted? Is it in how you treat the cashier at the grocery store?
It brings it all back home. It's not out there. It's right here.
It is. It's in the conduct.
Well, that gives us plenty to think about. Thank you for listening to this deep dive. As always, we appreciate you spending your time with us.
Take care.
And we'll catch you on the next one. Stay curious.